So I'm assuming that you can see my screen. So let's begin. Welcome, first of all, to the Design Sprint Masterclass. I'm your trainer. And thank you so much for spending 1 hour of your Friday with me. I hope you get something out of this session, and feel free to ask me any questions at the end. If you want any clarification, any questions you might have, and of course, we can connect later on also if we need. So before we get into the session, who's talking today? Who am I? I wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction about myself. So my name is Aadhya. I'm a design sprint master. I'm an award-winning designer, international design mentor, speaker, and facilitator. I have conducted the design sprint all around the world with many organizations, and I've seen the benefits of it. And that's what I'm hoping to introduce you all to as well. I'm a designer as well. So I'm a designer at Chennault, and I understand the importance of design, but it's also important to understand design where within industries that are not particularly connected to design or directly connected to design, and how do we help them, especially in banking and fintech. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we begin, I want to talk more about what's exactly happening in the world today, right? Industries are changing, current states of affairs are changing. ChatGPT has changed the way we function in a lot of the sectors, especially in banking, which has been affected. There has been a lot of fear of jobs because of the layoffs that have happened recently. So how do we stay relevant when there's so much change happening? And how do we compete on this level without losing our jobs, right? Or to upskill ourselves and do better in our careers as well. That happens when we learn more. We understand the importance of new skills and explore new environments. But all of this is not fruitful until and unless we start with empathy, right? When empathy is a very big word, but what exactly does empathy actually mean, right? So behavior of people change in different situations. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's all about the people and the behavior. Now, this is an equation that you might not recognize, and maybe some of you do. But what does this equation actually mean? And this formula actually state? This formula, the B stands for behavior. Behavior is the function of the person and his or her environment that displays where and when the people behave and how do they behave. What does this actually mean, right? So this is actually an equation that was first presented in the Lewin's book called The Principles of Topographical Psychology, which was published in 1936. What exactly does this equation propose is that a behavior of an individual and the function that they do or the way they act on that behavior is dependent on two factors, which is the people or the person himself and the environment that they are in. For example, think about yourselves. How you are at home in your own personal space is very different from how you are at work, or how you are at work is very different from how you interact with your friends. So this talks about how our behavior gets affected by a number of factors, and how it's important that we need to be aware of what is happening and how we are changing ourselves accordingly. And this is an important foundation for the design sprint. So what exactly is a design sprint? We speak so much about it. You guys have registered for this program, but what exactly is it? Well, the design sprint is actually a proven methodology for solving problems through designing, prototyping, and testing ideas with actual users. Now, the design sprint helps us to quickly align our teams under a shared vision with a clearly defined goals and deliverables. So ultimately, it is a tool for developing the hypothesis, prototyping an idea, or making a concept that we think we can create a solution from, and testing it rapidly with the minimum investment of time and money. right? In a real environment, as real an environment as possible, right? Of course, the fun part is everybody is involved in this process. Everybody has a say and everybody has equal ownership. Yes, don't get intimidated by the word design. It is not only for designers. This can be used for even on a personal level for you to think about ideas and push beyond what you previously thought your capabilities were, but also as a team to come up with solutions more rapidly and to think outside the box. So this is not limited to just designers or creative professionals. It can be used for anybody. Now, the secret is in the word itself. It's very quick, sprint, right? Now, design sprint help effectively accelerate decision making because it solves problems fast, validates solutions quickly, and helps us make decisions rapidly. That's what we need in today's world, where there's too much time taken in decision making. This allows us clarity of what we need to create and how do we create an applicable solution for our users in a best environment possible. Otherwise, what happens, it becomes risky, it becomes ambiguous, people are not on the same place, people don't understand what each other mean, a lot of misunderstanding, and that leads to a lot of ambiguity within the project. Now, why are sprints actually different? What makes a sprint different from other methodologies or other frameworks that you have learned? Well, the sprint fosters a shared language and a sense of equal ownership in the resulting solution. What does that actually mean? Well, with the sprint structure, the way it is, different teams merge. The PM, the engineering, the user experience design team, everybody comes together to create to problem solve, to come together, first understand what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve, and then go into the process a little more in depth and come up with a validated solution with our users, understanding what exactly the solution will and how exactly will it change our users' lives, right? So understanding this is very important. Also, this allows the quick decision making that we spoke about. Now, how is all of this coming together, right? How do I push myself beyond what I know? How do I learn this? Well, we start off with what we call the divergence and convergence thinking. Divergent thinking is the creative process of generating original ideas and new possibilities beyond what we had thought of. And convergent thinking or convergence is the process of finding a more concrete and familiar solution to the problems. Now, if I have to give you an example for this, think of you as a fisherman. When a fisherman goes out to catch fish, he throws a net. Without expecting how many fish, he's not planned it that he's only going to catch 100 or 500, whatever. He just throws the net, assuming that he's going to catch fish. That's divergence, because you throw as big a net as possible to collect as many ideas as possible. Now comes the convergence. Now, convergence is when we bring back the net to the boat and we see what all we have caught. That's where convergence comes into play, where we now funnel down how much of these ideas are actually viable and possible, because some ideas can be so out of the box that we don't have the technology to support it. So the convergence to see what exactly can we make, what is familiar to our users, and how do we best solve the problem. These two, thought process and design thinking, is very, very important and crucial within the sprint. And you'll see that in the methodology itself. So this is the design sprint methodology, the way it was created, which is this being the understand, where we are diverging, and then we converge down in understand. Again, we go through sketch, come down to deciding, then prototyping and validation. Now, this was the methodology that was introduced to all of us in the sprint book by Jake Knapp in 2016, when the book was released. But since then, Google has actually made a lot of changes, and one of them being that we have added a second step called defining. Now, I'll get more in depth into this a little later, but this will allow you to see the entire process and how the double diamond or the divergence and convergence thinking supports coming to the solution. So let's learn and see what else is there to understand. The traditional design sprint is broken down into 5 days. That is day 1 being understand, day 2 is sketch, day 3 decide, day 4 is prototyping, and day 5 is validating. Now, of course, a lot of it has changed since 2016, and the whole process has been customized to even 3 days and sometimes even a day. Though I don't recommend a day, it can be between 3 to 5 days. But here we are understanding what actually happens before the sprint even starts and what happens after. We cannot forget these 2 crucial steps, right? So as you can see, the entire process is highly interactive, experimental, and user focused. And the main thing about the sprint is it encourages you to push yourself to actually come up with solutions, no matter what position you hold within the organization, within the team itself. Now that we understand the sprint breakdown, let's think about what exactly is the purpose of this sprint. What exactly does a sprint do that helps you in any way, right? So number 1 is the sprint jumpstarts the decision-making process. So the sprint can help us when we're incredibly slow within our teams, when we're not able to make decisions, we're unsure of certain solutions that have come up with, and we can also prioritize our user feedback. Because user feedback and user testing is well ingrained within the steps of the design sprint, we can actually develop a product and solution by testing it with the users. Not to say that this solution will actually work and go to market. Even if it fails, we fail fast. Right? And the goal is to create a working prototype to test with the users to see if we can incorporate that into a viable product. And last but not the least is increased team cohesion, which means that the design sprint can change how teams work together by prioritizing rapid ideation, iteration, and decision-making to keep the sprint process or the design process moving forward rapidly. The teams can actually collaborate on various techniques, have equal ownership of the product, and also come up with a solution that's best to move forward with the least amount of time and least amount of money invested. And this allows us to actually go through different solutions that may not be viable today, but we can actually see the benefits for it in the future. Now, how does the design sprint work? There's a clear purpose, authentic validation, and clear outcomes. Everything is planned within the sprint. All stakeholders are in one room. Real-time expert feedbacks and decisions are taken within the room in the moment. And from getting started to being right, everything is possible. You're together, alone, and focused on the user. Now, yes, you are generating ideas both as a group with group discussions, but you also have alone time, the way the design sprint is created, where you can actually put your thoughts and your ideas onto a piece of paper so that you can better explain yourself. Now, of course, the focus is heavily on the users. Without the users, we are nothing. And everything is time boxed. What is by time box? I mean, everything is timed. So if you have 8 minutes for a task, you only have 8 minutes. That will keep you on time with the least amount of waste in terms of coming up with a solution. Now, most asked questions for me is, who is it for? Who can do the sprint? Well, leaders, managers, executives, designers, marketers, engineers, facilitators, team leads, sprint pros, developers, scrum masters, agile coaches, and everybody who is somebody. Anybody who's interested in creating something that is viable for a user, coming up with a solution, or somebody interested in problem solving can use the sprint methodologies to do it with the least amount of time, with a structure, of course. Now, how do we actually prepare for this sprint? There is a before. So how do we actually come up with a plan? So what is the preparation? So before the sprint, we choose a problem. The sprint facilitator or the sprint master actually comes up with a solution or a big problem that the sprint solution will be catered to, which is called the sprint challenge. That's the challenge that all of these team members who are coming within the sprint will actually focus on to solve. The second one is assembly of the team. Now, you as the facilitator are in charge of inviting experts on the topic, inviting team members who are going to spend the next 3 to 5 days within this room or ecosystem to come up with a solution and to problem solve. That could be anyone from any diverse role which has a direct or indirect effect on the sprint. It could be from the CEO to a sales rep. Anyone who is somebody who is important for that project can be invited. Of course, the assembly of a team I would recommend to keep it up to 7 stakeholders so that it's not too many voices and too many cooks. Then it is securing and preparing a space. If it is done physically, then we'd have a private room with whiteboards, markers, pens, pencils, sticky notes, dot stickers, etc. And I'll give you the list. Or we can even do it virtually nowadays with a mural or Miro, where we can conduct sprints on a virtual scale. So let's recap. One is you write the sprint brief or you write the sprint challenge. You book a room, whether that's physical or virtual, send out invites, invite the team through email, call, whatever. Then schedule expert talks for people who are experts in the field who need to come in to give you a little bit more perspective on the project, whether that's within the organization or from outside. Then, of course, create a sprint deck, just like the one that you're seeing, and invite your participants who will come in to do the user testing in the last day. Now, that's the planning. What happens during on the day of the sprint? Well, for you, you would arrive early and you would bring in all of the materials, the whiteboards, the pen, the pencil, the stationery, everything, and include snacks in that because people get hungry. So we should always feed the humans. And then set up a space, right? Put the whiteboards, make team areas for everybody to be able to sit and have a conversation, and then double check all of the tech because tech usually gives us a hard time. So double check all of that, ask permission, ask questions, and most importantly, take care of the humans. Yeah. Now that we've finished the sprint, let's talk about how to actually run it, right? Now that we have finished the preparation, we know what we've done before, we know what we've done on the day of the sprint. What is the first thing we do when we run the sprint? First and foremost, and the most important aspect of any sprint is the challenge. The challenge that you will take on or the problem that you would like to solve during this particular sprint cycle. So no problem is too large for the sprint, but it might take 1 or 2 cycles, depending on how big the problem is. And each sprint is centered on a single, clearly defined sprint challenge. So try to keep it vague, but also specific. I know that's a little bit counterintuitive, but it's important to have an open-ended problem statement. So there's possibilities of coming up with a solution, but it's also important to have certain points that are very clearly defined so we understand the direction of the sprint. This sets the foundation for whatever we do the next few days. That's why the sprint challenge is the first thing we work on. That's why it's important. Now coming to day 1, which is usually the understanding. Now the understanding phase is where you will actually create a shared knowledge because it's your introductory day. Everybody is either meeting each other for the first time or they're coming together and understanding this particular challenge for the first time. So understand actually helps us map out the problem and pick an important area that we want to focus on, right? It's not that we're coming here to solve world peace and to solve global warming. No, we're trying to pick a problem that we can actually solve within the next few days, and then maybe take it forward to refine and move through the traditional process of coming up with a solution and innovation. So this is the foundational day. And for the rest of the sprint, this day will set the tone. So to build a good solution, you need to understand the problem. But it's not enough to just understand. It's very, very important to define the problem. Now, define is the second phase where the team evaluates everything that they have learned in the understand phase. Understand phase is where you actually just go through the topics, understand what is exactly the problem area, go through all of the information that you can find. But defining phase is where you set the tone for the sprint. This is where you define specific context and the desired outcome of the potential solution. This is the important phase. And it concludes with coming up with a sprint target, as well as your goals and success metrics that will define the next step. And the next step being sketch, right? And as the word says, sketch is where you generate and share a broad variety, a broad range of ideas as individuals, and then having a group discussion on these potential solutions. And you start by looking for inspiration, such as solutions from alternative space or alternative world that might not be within the same industry as you are in, but can be implemented within the ecosystem. And a good example of this is where in healthcare, when children were scared of the MRI machine, which is very recent, they started creating pirate ships and setting themes for MRI machines so children would not be as afraid. Now, that is the healthcare industry borrowing from entertainment, from movies and Disney and all of that. And that helped them to reduce the anxiety. And that's just one of the examples. There are many such examples out there. At the end of this day, that is the sketch day, we come up with a well-articulated solution sketch per person so that we can see where do we move forward from there. Now comes our pivoting point, which is phase 4 or day 4, which is the decide phase. The decide phase in the sprint actually finalizes the direction or concept that we are actually going to build. Up till now, we have come up with a lot of ideas, lot of solutions, and lot of potential problem solving that we have done. But nothing has set in stone, nothing has been concrete, everything has been open-ended, everything has been discussed within the team. But now, each of the participants will share the solution sketch that they have individually come up with, and then the team will find a consensus on a single idea through decision-making exercises that will be ingrained into the sprint to figure out the final direction that we aim to address. And the sprint focus would be at this phase. And of course, what's the next phase? Day 5 and the last day of the sprint is the prototyping phase. Prototyping, as the word suggests, is where you actually build out the solution, build out the concept that we have labored the last few days over. So this is where many decisions are made across what exactly the concept is, what does the solution involve, whether that's feature sets, whether that's a physical product, how does it need to look, what's the color, etc. There are a lot of decisions that are being taken when we when we build the prototype. Now, don't get intimidated. The prototype doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to convey what the solution is so that the users understand when the users come in for the validation phase. Validation being the last step of the design sprint. This is the moment of truth. This is where you will call in your users and let your solution speak for itself. You will gather all the feedback that the users have given while they have interacted with the prototype, which is the user research and user testing that you would be doing. And if relevant, you will also conduct stakeholders and technical feasibility reviews if it's part of that sprint. And you'll end the sprint with a validated concept or an invalidated concept. So the sprint doesn't always have to be a success. In fact, it can fail. But the good thing is you failed fast. You didn't invest too much money, too much time on coming up with that solution. So you can fail quickly and maybe even do another sprint. So it doesn't always have to be a validated concept or a successful project at that. It could be a failure as well. But you improvise it and you move on, right? Now that we've finished the sprint, the steps of the sprint, we come down to the wrap up. Or after the design sprint, what happens? Yes, there are a few steps that happens even after we have finished the sprint. So the sprint is just the beginning of generating new ideas and developing solutions for whatever the challenge you've come up with. But The important part comes after. Once you have finished the design sprint, first thing is you archive every solution, every idea that you have come up with. Then you send email communications thanking everybody, from your experts to your users to the team who have come in. You take survey if required to understand if it was a validated, if they like the sprint, if they didn't like it, if there's certain aspect that needs to be refined for the next step. And of course, follow-up sprints, setting up follow-up sprints if required. Now, once we have sent all of this and considering that the sprint is a success, we don't need to conduct additional sprints, we move on, right? And the end of the sprint, whether it's a success or failure or a victory, the next step would be to actually take this forward and build out an actual solution through traditional processes. So sprint doesn't end, it's just coming up with a solution. But now how do you take that solution to market? That's the beginning from here. Now that we understand the steps of the sprint, I think most of you will ask me, how do I actually introduce this to my organization? What they don't understand, they don't care for it. How do I sell this to my team? Well, first and foremost is, do you understand the sprint? Because no matter how much I speak about it and no matter how much you read about it, unless you experience a sprint, you will actually not able to understand the value or the benefit of having a design sprint within the organization and how much it can benefit you as a person and also your team in coming up with a solution, in problem solving, right? But what is the benefit for the organization? Well, first and foremost, it's less money and it's less time. So none of the team members are spending months and months and months on coming up with concepts, ideas, problem solving. They come up with the solution within 5 days and come up with hundreds of ideas within the first 2 days. So organizations are benefiting by not wasting time, by making sure that everything that they're going to do within building this product or building the solution is validated and it is the right path to go forward, right? So that's the ideal situation for any business. Another thing is, most often within organizations, teams are very scattered. They're not sitting together. So once you finish your role within that project, you have no idea what has happened to it. Was it a success? Did it actually go out? Was it a failure? Did we stop? Most often that's what happens, that we don't know where the project landed. This actually allows us to all sit in the same room, looking at each other's screen, making sure that we have a validated idea and all of us put in our expertise, our skill set into this project. So we understand if it's a solution that is good enough to go to market, good enough to take to the next steps, right? And that's another important thing because it fosters ownership so that you don't feel disconnected within the organization or within the project also. And that's why you need to show that the sprint can add much needed clarity and provide validation within problem solving in just a couple of days. And saves you months and months of times, which without any guarantee of the work, where you spend hours and hours a day through months coming up with a problem, coming up with a solution for a problem that you don't even know if it will work or not. So that's the benefits of introducing sprint to your organization. Now, when do we actually conduct the sprint, right? When do we know what's the right time? Well, that again, first depends on sprint to sprint, depends on organization to organization, depends on the problem that you're actually trying to solve. But the few cases that the sprint actually works is when you are on a strict deadline, when you have a quick turnaround that requires a quick solution and you don't have a lot of time to come up with. Then the sprint exercises will actually help you push yourself and come up with many ideas in a shorter period of time. Second scenario would be when you have a very big challenge, when you have a challenge that needs to be solved, but it's too big for you to grasp the horizon. How much of it actually can be solved? Am I chewing too much? Is it too much on your plate? When it is too big and needs to be solved, a sprint will actually help break it down, because we also write down what is the problem statement in the beginning. That allows us to actually break down the different aspects of the challenge and then plan ourselves accordingly. And the third one, which is the most used, which is when you're stuck in decision making or you're even stuck creatively. So when you're stuck, you can take some time, whether that's as an individual, whether that's within your team, and conduct a few of the exercises of the sprint, pick and choose which one you need at which time, and conduct a sprint to see if you can come up with something beyond what you thought, right? Because we've all been in that where we have hit a wall and we cannot come up with anything else. Our brain has frozen and stops working. That's also when the sprint will help. Yeah. And of course, when you start a new project, when you're still trying to understand this project, what it's about, a sprint will actually help dig a little deeper. So these are the situations most likely that will occur when a sprint can be conducted. Otherwise, whenever you feel like. Okay. Now, another thing is the value of the sprint, right? I think I don't want to explain too much of this because I've taken you through a lot of the value within the presentation. But just a recap of that is the sprint favors collaboration over debate. Everybody has a say. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a CEO, a salesperson, marketing person, you can talk about your idea. You can talk about your solution. You can talk about your skill level, and you can influence the decision making by putting up what you think and your opinion forward. That's very important because most often it's a top-down method where the leadership tells you what to do. But in this case, you can actually put up a case, present yourself to see if it is what can happen. And of course, open it to a forum of people who will talk about it and see the best way to move ahead. Second would be you're involving the stakeholders, right? So not only within the team where you're involving people who are aspects of the process, but never sat together within the same room, but it's also involving the users, because users generally are very disconnected in coming up with any solution. They only see the well done solution at the end of the day, and they don't know if they like it, don't like it. You don't know whether you like it or don't like it. And it's a lot of confusion and a lot of waste. Third one would be the prototyping and experimentation. The sprint actually avoids too much time consumption, but also allows you to experiment a little bit, go beyond what you traditionally would, and visualize solutions rather than defining them. So you can actually see where you're moving forward and how the solution would, as close to the solution would look in real life, right? Then always testing with your users. Now the user is king. So considering all the perspectives, being efficient and effective, managing all of your stakeholder expectation and business expectations, and to learn fast and fail fast. So there's no problem in failing, because that's a lesson in itself. And there's a lot to learn from that as well. These are the values of the sprint. Now, in conclusion, I have taken you through the 5-day sprint breakdown, right? But the 5-day is just the traditional way. There is another way, which is the 3-day sprint, and I want to show you how that would look so that you have an idea what is the breakdown of that. Day one, so we merge two of the steps of the methodologies so that it can fit into the 3 days. Now, yes, this will be a little more intense compared to the 5 days where you have a lot more time. But sometimes the challenge is not so big that you need 5 days of investment, because it's 5 whole days. So you can do it a 3-day sprint as well. So you can customize as per your requirement and personalize it as per the project. Now coming to the ending, which is in-person design training is always good. It adds, because you're in the same room, you can talk about it, you can collaborate more efficiently. Then practical case-based live experience of the design sprint, consistent feedback and discussions during the program, exercises that you can put to use instantly, and no learning curve, just start applying and practicing. And all of this I teach within our full workshops, I know this is just 1 hour, so I've tried to explain as much as possible. But without experiencing the sprint, it's difficult to understand the core value and the core feasibility of what exactly a design sprint is. So sign up for our upcoming sessions. I know Garranto would help with that. And I also want to thank Yoon and Janet, who are here with us today, of joining us on your Friday night. And thank you, all of you, to listen to me and give me your 1 hour, especially on a Friday evening. Any questions?
Ma'am, we would like to remind everyone to fill out the attendance form, ma'am.
Absolutely, absolutely. Please. So I don't think we have any questions, but if you do, please feel free to let me know later on. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me.
If it is possible, we would like to take one attendance photo or so by enabling your camera.
So could you please switch on your camera so we can see who all have attended with us, if possible, of course.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and you have a wonderful weekend. Yeah. Bye-bye. Thank you, Yoon. Thank you, Janet, for everything.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
I'll see you all soon. Bye.
Ma'am, there is a question in the chat box, ma'am.
Oh, how to do a sprint planning? Well, like I previously mentioned, when you come up with when you have a problem for any project, the sprint, you start off with coming up with a sprint challenge that you want to take forward and actually build a sprint around. Then is important to understand who are the team members who are going to be part of the sprint cycle. Like I said, not more than 7 people, but those 7 people have to have a say within the user journey that you're going to take. The project will not work without these people. Those have to be invited. Then you invite experts who give you a different perspective on whatever problem that you're trying to solve, so that you understand a little bit more on what exactly is the problem, so that you can better equip yourself to come up with a solution. And then finally, it is to book the room, have the stationery, and then start facilitating the sprint. Of course, in order to become a facilitator and do the planning, you should take on a sprint class or a workshop and attend one with us also, to actually get your hands on the different exercises that actually happen within the sprint, so that you can conduct it better. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, I think that's the only question we had. I think that's it, right? Janet, do we have any other? I don't.
No, ma'am, there is the only one question.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, and you have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye.